Just a quick video to show you guys how to inoculate your logs. So this is what you'll need. So we've got a hammer to hammer in the dowels, a little wax dauber, or you can use just a small paintbrush. This is our 5/16 inch drill bit, and we've marked it off at, this year our wood dowels are 1 1/4 inch, so I marked it off just above 1 1/4 inch, so I added 2/16 of an inch, just that way you can ensure your dowels won't be sticking out at all, that way, because they would dry out if they were sticking out of the log. And we've got our melted wax here, so you want to have it set up so that you can keep it melted while you're drilling your holes. So you can use like a portable stove if you have it, or just an extension cord with a crock pot or something like that. And obviously we need our dowels. Today we're going to do lion's mane, oyster, and shiitake logs. So obviously just one species per log, otherwise they'll just compete with each other. So we're going to do two of each here. So these are our oyster dowels. They've just been broken up, so they look like they've been beaten up, but that's kind of good. It means they'll be in a really active growth stage. This is a shiitake dowel here. Okay, and here's our lion's mane dowels. So we're drilling into our log here now. We're going to drill at regular intervals across the log. So it's usually about 8 holes, because you're going to try and fit about 30 to 33 dowels in your log. And make sure when you're drilling that you're drilling straight into the log, so that when you plug it, your dowel goes straight into it as well. If you drill on an angle, it's going to be hard to line the dowel up properly, and then you'll get the dowel splitting. So this one we mostly finishing off now. He's got one more, and you see how he's staggering it. So and we stagger it just to ensure the best distribution of the dowels throughout the log. So he's got one here, one here, and then one here. Anyway, so you can see that along the log, and on 4 sides. So far he's done 2. Now he's got to do 2 more sides. So show what not to do on the angle there. So you don't want to drill on the side or something. Yeah, and just make sure you're directly into the log. All right. I think that's a little bit too close though. I think you gotta go, this is not 90. I would go a little bit further. There. So he's drilling down to what we pre-marked as our 1 1/4 inch, just slightly over 1 1/4 inch depth on our drill bit. All right, one more side. And when you're drilling too, make sure you clean out the holes really well. So he's drilling down, and then he's pulling up to take all the sawdust back out with it. Again, if you don't do that, then your dowel might not fit properly. All right, so we've got them all done, all 4 sides. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now it's time to get our dowels. We're gonna mark which species this is at the end of the log. So this species is oysters, right? Mm-hmm. So for us, that means P. Pleurotus ostreatus. And we always put B because it's a blue oyster strain or black oyster strain. And we'll just mark the year. Oh, my pencil's broken, so 21. And then we're going to seal that with wax after, so that next year we'll be able to, next year and in the fall we'll be able to see what species it is. Okay, so see how he's lining up his dowels nice and straight, just at the same angle that he drilled in. And you can line all the dowels up if you want to do it most quickly. You can line them all up in the hole and then tap them all in at once. It doesn't really matter, I don't think. For a few logs, it's not going to save a bunch of time. So if you have any that are sticking out at all, try and either cut that off, hammer it in the rest of the way so it's not sticking out. That's a bit better, now it's flush. And just make sure you cover it fully with wax. This log we have is a little bit smaller, so we're actually just going to do 3 rows in this one. Same about 8 holes, but instead of doing 4 around, we'll just do 3 because it's quite a bit of a smaller. This was closer to the top of our tree. So while Ivan's drilling away there, I just wanted to talk about a few other options for inoculating our logs. So there's actually a special plugger tool, which is almost like a little plunger, or like almost like a syringe. And what you do is you scoop up some sawdust spawn. So sort of like actually what we would inoculate our dowels with, basically pieces of inoculated sawdust. It's not quite as convenient to work with as the dowels, which is why the dowels are so nice. And the tool can be I think it's quite expensive. It's about $60. So it's something that if you're doing lots of logs, it's a great option for. And you can definitely get the hang of that plunger tool, so it can become quite efficient. The process is the same. You drill the holes, but rather than having the hammer to plug the dowels in, you actually just place the plunger into the hole and it inserts the sawdust spawn. So we have a dowel here that broke when we were trying to put it in, which will happen. Sometimes it's just on the wrong angle, or maybe we didn't pull enough of the sawdust out, or for whatever reason the depth wasn't right. So anyways, that does happen. What we're going to do is cut that off, and we'll be able to wax over it. Anyways, it'll still serve as an inoculation point because there's still mycelium going in just at a lower depth. So same with this guy. So if you get a sharp blade, then you're able to cut that off and make it flush. We don't want it sticking out because then it'll dry out, and it's a source potential area that competing fungi can get into the log. So now we've got our melted wax, which you can use beeswax, paraffin wax. We use like a cheese wax, which is paraffin based, has a little more flexibility than beeswax does, and normal paraffin wax, and it's a little bit less expensive, and it's also obviously very food safe, so that's kind of our top choice, but it is petroleum based, so beeswax is also another choice, but it can be prone to cracking at really cool temperatures. which is okay. You just have to then keep an eye on it in the spring and repair any wax that's cracked in like a potential area for moisture loss or for competing fungi to get in. So yeah, so you want to make sure your wax is nice and is well melted anyways for this part, and then you get the best coverage. So that's better. Yesterday we did this and it was not quite wet enough. So we'll seal our ends later. At the very end, I just dip it into the bowl. You'll need about 150 grams of wax for 3 logs. So 3 standard sized logs. And that includes sealing the ends. You can get creative. Like the ultimate goal of the wax is just to protect it, stop water from getting out, and stop any competing fungi from getting in. So by all means, if you want to give something else a try, to seal it wax, we would definitely recommend sealing it though. Some people try and get away with the minimalist approach because wax can be somewhat expensive, but this is just a step you don't want to skip. You can see my wax is already starting to harden a little bit. So that's why it's really nice to have like a portable stove or like the heat source close by so that we can go and warm up the wax. That's definitely the best way to go, is having warm wax. You don't use as much that way. The coverage is the best. It can get really frustrating when you're working with sort of chunky wax. This is like a double boiler setup, so it's boiling water below it definitely helps it from cooling down too quickly. And then I don't have to have a dedicated pot for it or a dedicated crock pot. Okay. So yeah, so we can either paint with like a little paintbrush at the ends of our logs to seal them. I'm just checking over, making sure I've sealed all my holes. Oh, one more here that I missed. Or you just, if your container is big enough, I would just dunk it in. Okay, so my favorite way to seal the ends of the logs is just to dunk it in. Make sure your container is big enough. There you go. Get good coverage on the side, and that's it. Plunk it in with both sides. Perfect. There we go. So just a quick video of our logs from last year that we inoculated to show how to properly store your logs. So you can see we've got so these are not the logs that we inoculated. These are logs that we just had some dried out old logs. So you can use pallets or something like that though to keep it elevated just slightly from the ground. This is a great storage technique when you have just a few logs that you've inoculated. If you're dealing with like, you know, over 10 logs, and often what they'll do is stack them. So using this kind of pattern. So you have your first logs in this direction, and then you keep stacking them up until they're about 4 feet tall, the piles. So here's some great examples of logs that are well colonized. This one is really well colonized. You can see the white mycelium at the end of it. This one is sort of poorly colonized or moderately colonized. You can see some colonization throughout. This one I think is as well moderately colonized. And then in contrast, these are some logs that we did that didn't take. They probably had some other competing fungi in there. So you can see they're basically almost no mycelium. This one actually has a little bit, but I would still say this one's poorly colonized. And another great indication was that it didn't take is that we actually had some mushrooms growing off of it by the fall that were not shiitake mushrooms. So that was a pretty good sign. Also a good example of why you should make sure you can identify the mushroom. All right, well, thank you for watching the video and for purchasing the dowels. We wish you the best of luck with your inoculation and with your mushroom growing at home. So just a final view of this is the kind of environment that you want to store your logs in. So the shadier, the better, where, you know, it's not wet on the ground, but that it's not going to dry your logs out. And under a tree is great because it has some fresh air flowing through the logs, but you don't want drafts that are also going to contribute to the drying out of your logs. And this, no matter what, gets tons of shade throughout the year, or it's always shaded anyways, even on sunny days. So we recommend that you keep your logs watered throughout the months of July and August when we don't have regular rainfall, just like you would your garden beds. You shouldn't need to water them during like the spring and fall when it's cool and we have regular bouts of rain anyways, but definitely during the heat of the summer. Sometimes that's not possible if the logs are left in the middle of the bush, but in that case they probably will be having moisture conditions anyways than if you're on like the north side of your house or in a shady part of the garden. Then they're going to be drying out a little bit better. So okay, anyways, thanks so much for watching, and yeah, good luck.